Today we are going to see next CICD service from AWS, which is CodePipeline. CodePipeline is a orchestration tool in the sense like it combines code commit, code build, and code deploy. So code will be residing in code commit repository. Code build we can use to test our code, compile our code, and make it deployable on EC2 servers. And for deploying that code we use code deploy. So all these three services we have seen in our past tutorials. So for this particular tutorial we are going to see CodePipeline, which is orchestration of all those services. So let's begin by going to CodePipeline. So first of all, just go into pipeline. We don't have any pipeline created, so let's create one. Right, I'll just say hello world pipeline, and I will just have new service role created for this pipeline, or we can use existing role if you already have one. And you should definitely, when you are using to have a new service role, just make sure that you click this, right? Yeah, so this artifacts, we either can have default location, which will create S3 bucket for us, or otherwise we can go into custom location and choose bucket, what bucket you want to put your CodePipeline artifacts. But for this we can just go ahead with default location, and it creates a bucket something like this. If you see it here, right, similarly it will create one for us. So let's keep it as is. On encryption we'll keep default AWS managed key, right? So let's do next. So source provider. So source provider, here we'll choose code commit, and we already have created code repository before, so we'll just use that. Hello world, and branch will be master. So again, we can segregate here, like if you want a different branch we can create that. For example, if you have development branch, you can create that, like we can choose that as a source provider, and that's how we can create a pipeline for development branch as well. So change detection option, like we'll have a CloudWatch event, and we'll see how this helps us, right? Build option, for now I'll just skip build stage, will not do this, so just skip this one, right? And then deploy provider, we'll just choose AWS code deploy. And what is the application we are using? Is hello world, and deployment group is my dev instances. So this we created in earlier tutorial. So just go next, and that's it. We can just repeat once again, just to make sure that whatever we intend to do, we are doing it as part of this pipeline. So artifact location, as I said, like we'll just see how it creates in S3. So source, we haven't specified build stage, so we are not doing any test for the code, right? So let's create pipeline. Okay, when you create the pipeline first time, it will invoke pipeline itself, and it will start going through all the phases. So here we have only two phases, which is code commit stage, and the next stage is deploy. So code commit is successful. That means like code pipeline could fetch code from here, right? So let's see. So this is still working. Okay, great. So you can see that this deployment worked. So when you created a pipeline, first time it invoked itself, and then we can see that deployment is completed, right? So couple of things with this. First of all, go to EC2 just to make sure that we can see our web page, right? Public DNS, and then yes, so this is working. So we didn't break anything, that is fortunately, yeah, right? So it is working fine. So yes, we have seen logs, we have seen which revision it is using, the revision which is used for this deployment. We can see it here, right? And you can see S3 bucket what it's used. So let's quickly go to S3 bucket, right, and see this bucket which was created for this deployment, right? So this is the one. So it created this folder, and this was a artifact. It was created as part of this pipeline, right? So let's go back. Yeah, so if we go into deployment, right, yeah, we can see these details from the deployment, but let me go back to pipeline, right? So most recent execution was successful. So what we can do is, if you go inside this pipeline, we can release change and it start the pipeline again, or otherwise let's see if we can invoke this pipeline from code commit. So let me go to code commit service, right? For example, I just want to change something here, right? So let me change, right, edit this file. We can directly edit from here, or we can again go back to git, edit the file in our local repository and push the changes to this code commit. So either we can do that, right? So here I'm changing hello world from AWS again, right? I'll just added this word again, and yeah, this one we can just mention anything. AWS learn, AWS learn @aws.com, for example, right? So who is committing it, and we can just commit message change index.html. okay, commit changes, right? So our changes are good, it is committed. So let's see here. So when you have done changes in your code commit repository, it by default it trigger this code pipeline, and that is the advantage of doing it through code pipelines. As I said, this is an orchestration tool, so you do not need to manually make a deployment. It deploys its code itself. So you can have these changes multiple times. You can change the code multiple times, and it will invoke this pipeline, and at the end deploy our code. So that is a good thing here. So very frequently you can have a deployments, and that's what the whole purpose of the CI/CD pipelines, right? So yeah, so this code, we can see it is successful. We again can go into details and dig further. We can go into the logs, see what was done as part of this deployment. All these things we can do, but let's see whether our deployment was what was expected. Yeah, you can see hello world for AWS learn again. So this was the key which we added, right? So what caused this to get it triggered, right? That is the question. So what caused it to trigger this pipeline? And basically what happened is, there is a CloudWatch event, because if you remember, when we created a pipeline, which was a recommendation from AWS as well, that use CloudWatch to trigger this pipeline. So that's what happened. So if we go to CloudWatch, right, let me see if we can see that. 1 minute. CloudWatch. just go into rules, which is a event, and hello world, this is a event which was created. If you see this event, this was the event which got triggered and the status is enabled. So if you look into it, right, you will understand like why this like our code pipeline got triggered. If you see this, right, code commit repository state change. So whenever you are making any changes to code commit, that will trigger our code pipeline. So this is why it was triggered. So similarly, like if you go back, just let's go back to code pipeline, right? So this was a pipeline which was created. So yeah, so for now we can like change this pipeline, right? So we can do more than what we have just done, right? So for example, like I want to add one stage which says approval, right? Let's see, approval stage, right? I'm just giving some name, right? So what we have done is we added stage in between code commit and code deploy. So here I can add, now you can do multiple actions. So for example, like what I do is I will add approval from manager. For example, action provider is manual approval. Yeah, this we can keep it as is, or if you want message to be sent, something like that, right? You can even give that, and even URL for review you can add this. For example, let me add this, right? Let me add URL. So what URL? And please review and approve for deployment. So let's done, right? So even you can add more action group. So here like you can add more action group which will sequentially, it will call that. So once one approval is done, you can even add more approvals. If you have a workflow, so even you can build it here. You can add multiple approvals and even other tasks you can add. So same thing, if you want to add action which is like this two will have will trigger that simultaneously. This approval and this approval, it will be simultaneously, this will be triggered. If you add the action group, then what happens is it will be sequentially done. First this approval, then this approval, something like that. So even you can do this. So I'm done with this adding approval stage. So now I'm saving it, right? So I can release change from here, or again you can go back and do some changes in your git or your code commit code, and then that will trigger workflow. But for here I'm just releasing change. So this will just manually invoke our pipeline. So it's one and the same thing, but here we are doing it through code pipeline itself. Just go into release change and start this execution once again. Okay, so let's see. Now if you see, right, it will not go further. It will just stuck here and it is waiting for approval. If you see it here, it is pending. So this pipeline will not proceed till we get the approval for this can be added as approval from manager. So manager will come, it will get reviewed and he can see like okay, so everything looks good, something like that. I've just given some URL here, but you can, whatever URL you added, right, that manager can review. So I will say, like, if you want to reject, if you reject, that will end our pipeline. So this code will not get deployed, for example, in production, right? This is a good thing. Approve for deployment. Let's see, once we approve, right, ideally it should invoke deployment. Yeah, these are, so if you can see, action approval from manager was approved. So once this approval is secured, you can see that deployment started, right? So this is how we can manage individual stages. We can add approvals, and then even like this is useful like when you are deploying in production, right? Even when you are doing development, there you do not need approval. Just one scenario, you do not need approval. Like you can directly go into development instances and deploy it. But when it comes to production, you can even give this URL, right? You can give for development URL. So their manager can review, okay, all is good, then approve it for production, something like that. And let's go here again and see that our web page is working as expected. This is good. Yeah, so this is the other thing we can do, and even we can like improvise this further. For example, let me add one more stage. Okay, so what I will do is, yeah, before approval, right, I'll just go ahead and test it, test code, right? And in that I'll add action group like test for hello world string. We'll just test for a hello world string, and we'll do it through code build, right? So infinite artifacts, so whatever is coming from earlier stage, right, code commit, this source artifact will use that, and this will be kept as we have seen, it will be in S3. So code pipeline manages that. So project is hello world, right? And this we already created in code build, so we are just making use of that single build, right? Test result, I'll just say like this, right? Output artifacts. Okay, so done. So we have added one more stage, which is test code, right? So it will look for a hello world string, and then if the string exists, then only this will work, or this should go to the next stage. Okay, so let's see, like we'll just trigger save first, save our pipeline. Okay, so this has saved the pipeline. You just release change. Okay, let's wait for this to trigger next test code, which is again like using code build. Yeah, we can go into details and see what it is doing. Yeah, so we can monitor code build, right? We have seen this before, but if you go into view entire log, it will take us to CloudWatch. If you see, yeah, we can see what all it is doing. Okay, great. So this one is completed. So even we can go into logs and see it, right? So this is just tail we are doing on the logs, but if you want complete log, as we have seen, you can go into view entire log and it will take you to CloudWatch. Great, so this works as expected. So let's go back to code pipeline, right? Oh, so it's still in progress. All right, so text code is done. So now it again is waiting for approval. So our test is good. So what we can see if, as part of code build test stage, right, that our code is deployable, it is good, we didn't identify any bug or no issues with that. So now we are sending it for manager approval. So let's see what manager says, right? Okay, he says approved. So even like this URL, we can give it for development or whatever. Like he can see this URL and decide on his rejection or approval. So he approved it. So now it should, yeah. So now this is completed. Now we are into deploy stage, right? So let's wait for deployment to happen. Okay, yeah, so this is deployed, right? We can again like same thing like what we have seen earlier, right? This is all the stages have completed fine, all the hooks are invoked and completed fine. So let's go to pipeline, right? Yeah, so the pipeline is successful, and that is how we can deploy our code. So these are the multiple stages which we added. Now what more you can do is just see that like when you change code in our code commit, right, that again will trigger this workflow. So it will go through all the entire workflow again, and we already have seen it. Like this is we release it from here, but similar thing can be done from code commit, and we have seen that earlier. And again, like we'll just have one more test just so that we are making sure that our code is working as intended, and what is the use of this one like build stage, right? So let me see this. Okay, let me remove this hello world completely, right? So now I'm just saving this. AWS learn. This is just details who is committing this change, right? Remove hello world, and this is basically it that our code build tests for, right? So commit changes. I just committed the change, and now immediately we'll just go into pipeline and see what it is doing, right? Yeah, so ideally it should have triggered our, yeah, it is triggered. Yeah, that's what. So code commit is stage is completed, and we are into test code stage. So let's see. So we expect that this stage errors out because this is not the code which we want to deploy. Our test says that it should have hello world in index.html, but if it is not there, ideally it should say that your code is bad and it should stop our deployment. So let's wait like what it is doing. Okay, great. So error while executing grep, right? So it tried to find out whether hello world is there in the index.html, and it didn't find. And let's see what happens to build stage. So build stage is failed, which is expected, but we want to see what happened to our pipeline itself, right? We don't want to deploy this bad code, right? See, so it even didn't go to approval stage. So here itself it decided that your code is bad, and it like just errored out and stopped our deployment, and that is how it should work. So now we can even retry it. If you go into the code, you change your code, and then you can go and retry the code build stage itself. But what we will do now is let's do it right way. We'll just go to code commit. Okay, this is our code commit repository. Go to our index.html, edit. Okay, so now what we'll do is just will add hello world from AWS. and yeah, we can just keep it as is. Earlier, if you remember, like again, at the end should be deployed. This is our final production code, right? Which is again at the end. So now we made changes, and we'll save this. And anything you can just give this, and corrected code. Okay, so the changes are committed. I'm going back to code pipeline and just wait what it does. Okay, so it, like with our code commit changes, it triggered workflow again. So this pipeline started. So let's see how it goes this time. So this time what we expect is code build should say that our code is good because it finds hello world there. But this is just example where we are greping hello world, but we can have extensive test to the code, right? So this is very much possible in code build phase, test code, right? So let's see what happens. So we are just waiting for it. Okay, so we can just same thing, we can go into tail log and see. Okay, so this is completed, so hopefully it is looking good. Yeah, so even you can go into phases and see how much time each phase take. All this is like information which you can verify, right? Build detail was what was the source artifact, what was the role used. So this service role, so this is useful when you are actually troubleshooting, like if something is not working due to permission, so you can go into service role and review what is there for the service role. So all this you can do it here. So if I go into code pipeline, you can see test code is successful. So this is still waiting for approval. So just approved. Now it is deploying it. So this should complete real quick approval stage, and then it is expected to move to deployment because we approved it. Yeah, so that stage is completed, approval stage. So now final deployment stage. So let's see what happens, right? So here if you can go into code deploy, right here itself I can go and see deployments, right? Okay, hello world, these are the multiple deployments what we did, right? So let's go here. Yeah, good. So this is deployed. That's how our complete pipeline is working as expected. So I'm just going to our web page and see if our final code is there. See, so hello world from AWS learn deployed using AWS CodePipeline. So that's how we want to see our final code. So hope friends, like you learned something new. You got the idea about how code pipeline can be effectively used to orchestrate our workflow. Like we have seen how to make changes to code commit, then how it triggers our workflow, and then we have added build stage where we check our code, make sure that it is deployable. Then we added approval stage where someone senior in the team, right, or manager, he can review the code and then review the result and then approve for deployment in production. So that we have seen, we have simulated that as well. So all looking good, and hope this makes sense to you and you are able to correlate what was happening. And the key thing you should remember is all this is happening because we have CloudWatch event created. So as part of creating a pipeline, we mentioned that we want to use code like CloudWatch event, and that's how it's triggering it automatically. So that is very handy, and this integration you should start making sense to you by this time now. Okay, thanks a lot guys. Like hope you learned something new and enjoyed watching this tutorial. And definitely if you go through code commit, code build, code deploy, this first tutorials, right? This will really make more sense to you, and you will appreciate this. Okay, thanks for watching, and as usual, keep learning. Enjoy. Bye.